Life in the Ocean, the story of oceanographer Sylvia Earle. When we turn to the title page, we find that Life in the Ocean, the story of oceanographer Sylvia Earle, is written by Claire Nivola, and it's published by Francis Forrester Books in New York City. This book was published in 2012. Seen from above, Earth's land seems to float like islands on a vast sea. There is so much more blue than green. Hidden below the surface of that ocean lies an immense watery world. Catching the sun's light at first, then cold and utterly black in its depths. The sea covers mountains taller, plains broader, and valleys steeper than any here on land. Life came from the ocean long ago, and without the ocean, none of us, neither you nor I, could survive today. Living organisms in the sea release the oxygen we breathe in and take up the carbon dioxide we breathe out. Along with the plants on land, the ocean forms the lungs of our planet, breathing in and out. Its surface evaporates to form the marvelous clouds that give us rain and snow. Its temperature shapes the weather patterns we live by, and it is home to more life forms and surprising creatures from its shallows to its deepest depths than we have here on land. Sylvia Earle, who has spent more than 7,000 hours underwater, calls the ocean the blue heart of the planet. Sylvia began her early childhood inland on an old farm just outside Paulsboro, New Jersey. Her mother and father bought the place when Sylvia was 3 years old so that she and her 2 brothers could grow up in the country just as their parents had done. Even when she was very small, Sylvia spent hours outdoors exploring on her own. She was far too curious to be afraid. There were so many living creatures in every inch of the nearby woods, in the farm's pond, in its creek, and among the gnarled trees and grapevines of its orchard, that she really never felt alone. Sylvia's parents planted apple, pear, and walnut trees and a large vegetable garden. Countless butterflies visited the flowers of the garden, and the fragrance of the lilac bushes in May made one's head spin. Little Sylvia would sit by herself very still and for a very long time, waiting and watching to see what was going on in the pond or under the fallen tree in the woods. Her mother called these outings investigations. In a notebook, Sylvia described what she saw. The windowsills of the house were lined with her collection jars, which held tadpoles, salamanders, insects, and plants. Sylvia said she was a biologist and a botanist long before she even knew what those words meant. When Sylvia was 12, her family moved to Florida. Gone would be the pond, teeming with life in summer and glazed with ice for skating in winter. Gone her beloved pony and quarter horse, the orchard, creek, and woods. How hard it was to leave, and yet Sylvia could not possibly have imagined what awaited her as they drove up the dead-end street to their new home north of Clearwater. There before her lay a vast, broad sea. In New Jersey, she had visited the Atlantic Ocean, but this water was a clear blue-green, and it was warm and calm. The Gulf of Mexico right in her own backyard. It was then, her mother said, that Sylvia lost her heart to the water. That birthday, Sylvia was given a pair of swim goggles. Floating on the surface of the grassy water, she began her investigations all over again, finding tiny crabs, darting fish, and the occasional seahorse that reminded her of the horse and pony she had left behind. Meeting all these new creatures, she said, softened the blow of leaving the farm. How could she feel lonely when every spoonful of water was filled with life? In the library, she found books by naturalist William Beebe, describing his descent into the deep ocean in his bathysphere. That happened some 30 years earlier. Sylvia wanted to see what he had seen with her own eyes, and as she grew up, it seemed nothing was going to stop her. When Sylvia was only 5, she had climbed, unafraid, into a single-passenger seat behind the pilot of a small plane and flown up and over the field where her parents watched amazed. From the age of 16, when she swam 30 feet to the bottom of a river using diving gear for the first time, to scuba diving while researching algae for her university degree, to joining an expedition where she was the only woman among 70 men on a research ship in the Indian Ocean, to leading a team of divers stationed for 2 weeks in a deep-sea laboratory off the U.S. Virgin Islands, to walking on the ocean floor in an aqua suit that looked more like a space suit, to descending 3,000 feet in the Pacific Ocean in a one-person spherical bubble she had helped to design, to plunging 1,300 feet underwater in a Japanese submersible. Sylvia never stopped trying to dive deeper and see more. Again and again she has emerged from her dives to tell us what she has seen. She describes creatures who do not fear her, but rather look at her with the same curiosity she has for them. Take the humpback whale, 40 feet long and weighing 80,000 pounds, who on the first day of a 3-month whale study swam straight at her like a freight train bearing down on a mouse. Moments before the collision, the whale swerved gracefully, tilting her great head to look into Sylvia's eyes with her own grapefruit-sized eyes as she slid past inches away at high speed. By the second day, the whales were waiting for the boat. As Sylvia dove into the water, the dark shapes instantly swam swiftly toward her from below. From the start, Sylvia said, I found myself observed by them. Pictures of whales, says Sylvia, make them look big and fat and ponderous and lumpy. Whales are like swallows, like otters. They move in any direction. They swim upside down. They're vertical. They're every which way. They are sleek and elegant and gorgeous among the exquisite creatures on the planet. They move like ballerinas, rollicking, frolicking creatures, doing all this wonderful dancing in the sea. Sylvia has even heard whales singing while she has been underwater, and once the force of the sound made her entire body vibrate and shake. Wavelengths of light do not penetrate deep into the water, but sound waves travel 4 times faster in water than in air. So whales can communicate across vast distances. Sylvia says that hearing their haunting and beautiful songs in the sea is like being inside the heart of an orchestra. So much of diving is an all too brief glimpse below the surface. Sylvia had always wanted to know what it was like to live in the sea, to be a part of the daily life of the underwater world. She finally had a chance to do just that when she spent 2 weeks 50 feet below at the deep sea station Tektite 2. For as many as 12 hours a day, she swam among the fish and coral reefs, watching the changeover from day to night and back again. Using a small flashlight at night, she noticed that the day fish tucked into the same nooks and crevices the night fish had just vacated, each fish often returning time and again to its same resting place, just as we do. Among others, Sylvia came to know the 5 gray angelfish she saw each day, one shy, one more aggressive, some, like her, full of curiosity. She observed the whole cast of characters, squirrelfish, triggerfish, parrotfish, that came and went in the course of a day and night, the way you get to know a neighborhood if you keep your ears and eyes and heart open. Just as no two people are alike, no two creatures of the sea are alike. And yet, we all have so much in common. Think of eating and digestion, Sylvia reminds us. Lobsters do it, horseshoe crabs do it, sharks do it, we do it. Of that time, she has said, I'm changed forever because I lived underwater for 2 weeks in 1970. I wish that everybody could go live underwater, if only for a day. Sylvia was just as eager to travel as far down as possible into the deepest ocean. The walk she took in the gym suit 9 years after her stay among the coral reefs was on the ocean floor off Hawaii, 1,250 feet down, deeper than anyone has ever walked. She had imagined, as we might too, that it would be black darkness down there. If she had gone another 1,600 feet down, it would have been. But here, to her delight, the midday sun still sifted its blue light waves through the clear ocean water, and she found herself in a magical twilight of deep indigo. There weren't stars visible, but there were bioluminescent creatures flashing their blue fire. From the ocean floor sprang a field of bamboo coral, some stalks taller than she was. When she touched the top of the long pale spirals, little blue donuts of light pulsed down them. When she touched them at the bottom, the same pulses moved upward, ring after ring of light. Every spoonful of water in the deep ocean, Sylvia says, is brimming with extraordinary forms of life. Creatures, each in their own way, sparkle and flash with lights of their own, like fireflies here on land. One expedition, 3,000 feet down, was, Sylvia says, like diving into a galaxy. We've explored only 5% of the ocean. We know more about the planets in outer space than we know about the sea on our very own home planet. Sylvia Earle believes that if we do not learn about the ocean world, we will never really care about it or take care of it. When you look out over the ocean, stop to think of the vast mountains, valleys, and plains below its surface. Think of how it breathes and gives us life. And think about all the wondrous creatures it holds in its waters, from whales to busy, colorful coral reefs, to those living firework displays that light up the cold, black waters of its mysterious depths. Author's note: as soon as Sylvia Earle began her investigations in the clear waters of the Gulf of Mexico, she dreamed of going deeper, staying longer. The challenge of finding ways to provide the oxygen needed to breathe while under the tremendous pressure of the sea later led Sylvia to start 3 companies and a nonprofit foundation aimed at designing and building systems that can explore the deep ocean. Becoming an entrepreneur and facing obstacles along the way, in part because she is a woman, are a large part of her story. For some, Sylvia Earle's life serves as an inspiring example of a woman who, in pursuing her passion, has defied conventional expectations at every stage of her life. In fact, Her life could be viewed as a remarkable list of achievements for any marine scientist, setting diving depth records, serving as chief scientist of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, serving as explorer in residence at the National Geographic Society, consulting as a world expert on oil spills, and writing and speaking widely on the plight of the ocean. But Sylvia Earle's accomplishments have always been in the service of her lifelong passion to witness firsthand the marvels of the sea and increasingly to serve as a spokeswoman for the vital importance of the ocean to the health of our planet and to our very survival. Sylvia Earle would like us all to delight as much as she does in the underwater world, in the ingenuity and variety of fellow creatures who dwell there. But she has also seen close up how the ocean is suffering at our hands. She believes it is our ignorance of what is at stake that is in large part to blame. Sylvia was born in 1935. Most of the damage done to the ocean has taken place during her lifetime. In less than a century, a sea world that has been in the making for some 3.5 billion years is becoming altered by human activity. Explosive human population growth, combined with modern fishing technologies, has emptied the ocean of 90% of its big fish and depleted its numbers of turtles, sharks, tuna, and whales. More than 80 million metric tons of ocean wildlife are fished each year, and for every fish caught and sent to market, quantities of other less valued fish are killed and discarded as waste. Not only are we using up our marine food source, we are diminishing the biodiversity that all life depends on. Our use of oil for energy has made it a routine matter that thousands of oil spills take place in the ocean each year. The famous Exxon Valdez spill in the pristine Alaskan waters of Prince William Sound in 1989 was minor compared with others. During the Gulf War 2 years later, 45 times as much oil was spilled into the Persian Gulf. In 2010, hundreds of millions of gallons of crude oil poured into the Gulf of Mexico, the ocean waters Sylvia had snorkeled in so happily as a child. During that disaster, an unprecedented 2 million gallons of toxic dispersants were used to break down the oil. As Sylvia testified before Congress, these chemicals make the ocean look a little better on the surface, where most people are, but they make circumstances a lot worse under the surface, where sea creatures are. They're awash in a lethal brew of oil and butoxanthol. Into our ocean, all around the world, we have dumped lethal nuclear waste, industrial waste, pollutants from underwater mining, and just plain garbage. We abandon sunken ships and allow our highways, farms, fields, and yards to leach fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemicals into freshwater systems, leading to coastal waters and on to the sea at large. Are we thinking that our sea is vast and deep enough to take all this and more? Plastic breaks down into smaller pieces, but does not disappear altogether. There are areas of our ocean that contain more plastic than living plankton. The ocean is simply not big enough. And we filled the sea with new sounds, too. Drilling, explosions, boat engines, sonar. For creatures like the whales in this story, exquisitely sensitive to sound waves, these human interferences can cause great suffering, disorientation, strandings, and possibly even death. Since the Industrial Revolution in the early 19th century, the ocean has generously taken up 50% of the carbon we have released into the atmosphere. But as we burn more and more fossil fuels, the carbon in the ocean increases, and so too does acidification, a change in the ocean chemistry that makes it more difficult for corals, mollusks, and other sea creatures to form the skeletons that protect them. Moreover, as the climate warms, there is concern that the release of methane, a potent heat-trapping gas stored deep in the frozen seafloor sediments, could further accelerate the warming of our planet. Sylvia Earle has written, "Looking into the eyes of a wild dolphin who is looking into mine inspires me to learn everything I can about them and do everything I can to take care of them. You can't care if you don't know." The bibliography of this book includes 7 articles that have been written by Sylvia Earle herself.